Welcome back to RotaryCraft, and this is episode 4, I believe. Now, we're going to talk about some more advanced stuff today. We've been doing the kind of simple stuff just to get us started with RotaryCraft, but it does get a bit more complicated. Not terribly more, there's just a few rules to take into consideration, and hopefully you'll stay with me and won't get lost with them. Let's start with some of the simple stuff. Has that finished? Yeah, got some more HSLA, that's what I'm going to need. We'll finish with the industrial coil, and I ran it for a while after the episode. And let's check the angular transducer. 79 megajoules. Now, it can store up to 720 without exploding, so I'm not going to go into more advanced stuff with that yet, but that's kind of a stored bit of energy for us. We can just flip this lever to get it unload. This, by the way, my grinder is not actually currently grinding canola. We can use it for a range of other things. It's very much like a pulverizer in thermal expansion and other similar mods. It can actually multiply things. In the case of a pulverizer in thermal expansion, it's doubling. But in the case of the grinder, it triples things. Just bear that in mind. So you can use it to get more sugar out than you otherwise would. And similarly, you can use it for ore. So I've been talking about Extractor, which is the Extractor, which is coming up, and that can quintuple ore, or in other words, multiply it by 5 times. Whoops, wrong one. However, we can also when I say just triple ore by putting it into here. And to give you an idea of what that looks like, let me just get to some ore, a couple of pieces of iron. I'm just going to swap that out with the sugar so that it doesn't get replaced with canola. And let's just put a couple of pieces of ethanol into it. And we'll leave that running while I continue to talk. No pun intended. I've also cheated in a couple of sound mufflers because this thing is just too loud. With these, you can cover them with wool or use a sound muffler. That's fine, but this wool doesn't work, so sorry, we're going to have to use a sound muffler. And I got a huge amount of comments and really good advice by a commenter called Toxurial. If I have not butchered that name, I'm sorry if I did. With just lots of hints and tips that aren't in the book in RotaryCraft, and that's one of the slight downsides with RotaryCraft, that not everything is in the book. And we'll cover some of those as we actually go through, as well as all the other things. But this episode, we're going to need to talk about gearing. We're going to need to talk about combining and splitting power. Because right now, we're just attaching things directly to engines. And that works as far as it goes. There we go, by the way. That's filled up with canola, so I'm just going to swap that back out. And I got 6 flakes out of it. And the flakes are the equivalent of dusts, if you like, with a pulverizer. And you just cook those up in the furnace and they turn into ingots. Easy. So that's easy tripling, just with a grinder and one of these. And there is a way to actually do this with a steam engine. I'm going to show you more advanced stuff. I just wanted to get the direct attached engine stuff out of the way first, because although these are higher tier things, with RotaryCraft, one of the big advantages is that you can get away with less lower tiers of stuff with more complexity on the front end between the engine and the actual machine you're working with. So just do bear that in mind. We're going to revisit some of these machines. So where was I? Yes, talking about splitting and merging stuff. So let's talk briefly about the Extractor. That's a good thing. I think I did show you the recipe, but just as a recap. So quite a simple one. There's nothing excessive. We've seen all this before apart from the drill, and the drill is just HSLA steel. And there's a couple more items used in this episode. I've already crafted them just so that you don't have to watch me crafting and running around all over the place. Bevel Gears. Simple recipe, really. Same things we've already seen. As well as shaft junctions. And again, very, very simple recipe. You only get 2 instead of 4, though. Just bear that in mind. Okay, and the engines have stopped. Okay, so let's just get a few of those out. So, shaft junction, gearbox we're going to come to in a second. Bevel gears, and let's look at the extractor. Yes, I built one. Okay, so naively, you may think, hey, you've got an industrial coil now, you've got all this energy stored up. Well, if I right click, I can actually choose what I want to do. I can output at 1024 rads per second, and I can output the torque, but that is a max of 512, I think. Or maybe no, maybe I can output whatever torque I want. Okay, so torque's easier then, but let's just say I wanted 512 because that's reasonable. The problem we get whatever we output from this, we can't get any faster speed, by the way, and that's the main problem with this. Is that if I want to use an extractor, and let's put it down first of all, just with the bevel gear. Yeah, so bevel gear, let's put it there for the now. We'll come back to that. If I right click with empty hand, I get this interface. I want to check which way I'm pointing first. East is that way, so that's the input, and up is where I'm going to put the extractor because it has to accept power from the bottom. So input side is east, output side is up. These didn't used to be labeled, these used to be colours you had to look at, and everyone was looking at these and going, which way, what? So directional is much easier. So let's just put the extractor down for a second. And that's pretty much done. Quintuples, yay! No. If we look in the handbook for extractors, and it's under production, I think. Am I production? Processing, nearly. So in here, it gives you a description of the whole thing, along with all the stages, which we don't really need. I mean, if you wanted to follow these really accurately, you could. But it says near the bottom here, you need 512 newton meters of torque at 8,192 rads per second to run all four stages. What are the all four stages? Well, in an extractor, these are the four stages. Stage 1, Stage 2, Stage 3, Stage 4. On the right hand side, you see the power, speed, and torque gauges, which you've seen in other machines. Here we go. But not quite like that, just because there's just a lot of stages. So let's get that sludge and make sure I cook that up. I'm going to need more ethanol. And let's just wait till I've got 9. Yeah, so we've got 4 bars now instead of just 1 on each of these. So this is enough power for stage 1, stage 2, etc. And the same thing with speed and the same thing with torque. So there's variable amounts of speed and torque needed for each one. And we also need water. Where's the liquid pipe? And I've run a pipe out. And that is connected. So water is needed, I think, if I remember rightly, it's for the middle two, but it doesn't really matter. The main difficulty here is going to be that, okay, if we need 512 newton meters of torque at 8,000 rads per second, well, I can get the torque, but the rads per second, not so much. So what I want to do is deal with translating that, if you like, in using gears. So what we can do here is I can use a gear system. And did I take the gears out? Steel 16:1. Okay, I can use a gear system to change this speed, and consequently I have to change the torque when that happens. So if I choose a 16 times gearbox, let me just put this down to 512. If I multiply that by 16, I'm going to get 8192, which is exactly what this needs. So if I have the gear one way around, it's going to improve the speed. Great. If I have it the other way around, I can modify the torque in the same way. So I need, let's see, what do we need? Let's just start with 128. Whoops, 128. So that should get us to 2K, I think. Hang on. Where's my calculator gone? I'm terrible with powers of 2, sorry. 128 times 16. Yeah, it is 2048. I'm not going mad. Okay, so if we have a gearbox, we can translate that both ways by flipping it around in one direction. This so let's say we put it in speed mode. It's going to multiply this top figure by 16, divide this top figure by 16, and we're going to end up with very, very little torque, like 8 Newton meters. And if we spin it the other way around, we're going to reduce this by 16 and times the torque by 16, so up to 2048 at 32 rads per second. But sometimes we can set this a lot higher than it is, up to 2024 and a lot more torque. It'll just use up the power in here. Be careful. If you build a stone 16:1 gearbox, depending on what the load is on the stone, and when you're spinning it around and when you're changing your torque and changing the speed, it can easily break it. I've already broken a stone one before now, and the 16:1 steel one I've not actually tried. I don't see any official figures in here for the gearboxes. It's a bit annoying if that's not the case. I'd expect like a second page saying, hey, here's all the actual failure items for these. So if it is in here, do let me know in the comments. But otherwise, just be a bit careful. I'm onto steel, so let's see how this goes. So before I turn this on, I'm just going to turn this around. So always remember, power's coming from green, heading to red. If I right click on this one, coming from green, heading to red, and then this is fine. So what this should, well, it depends which way around I've got this now. If I turn this on, it's either going to explode, or and we'll see if that happens, if I've not worked out the math correctly, or it's going to power enough for some of these stages. So let's just turn it on for a second, and it's working. And you can see I've got enough torque for all 4 phases, but I don't have enough speed for the middle 2. So that, as it's set up, is enough for phase 1, because remember, I have enough speed and torque for phase 1. It's only like phase 2 and 3 where I don't have enough. So let me just get some. You see, I've been doing some experiments, but if I just grab some actual iron ore, and let's get 5, because if you want to quintuple, we should end up eventually with 25 stuff. So if we put this in, and we flip the lever, or lever, I'm English, I shouldn't pronounce it the American way, and use the angular transducer, you'll see we're slowly losing power. Now, if I set this thing, and I can, a lot higher, that power is going to drop like you would not believe. It's like 1 megajoule per second. So just bear that in mind. You can set this up quite efficiently with these figures: 512, 128, and a 16:1 gearbox. And that's going to need lubricant, of course. I already put the lubricant in. Don't turn it on without lubricant, otherwise you're going to damage the gearbox. And you'll see it's going through this into phase 2, and it's going to stop here for a second until we actually get enough speed. And then we can do that by flipping the mode. Now, flipping the mode is shift right click with a screwdriver. That'll change it from speed mode into torque mode, and then, well, vice versa. It's in torque mode at the moment, but into speed mode, and then we should end up with enough speed to actually power phase 2. So if, let's actually just do that while I've got some things still in phase 1. You'll see what happens. So shift, click that around. We changed modes into speed mode. And now it can process 2 and 3. Now you see I had 2 come into this one, but it has now doubled. It's about a 50% chance to double at each stage. So you're not always going to quintuple, but you can at least start that way. And you see we've gone through the middle here, and we've gone through these 2 phases. And it's going to continue to do that until it gets to the end. And then what we can do is flip it back, and then both phase 1 and phase 4 will be running at the same time. There we go. Flip it back. Shift right click. And now we're going to get phase 1 going, and this final phase going from these 4. Now, I'm already up to, from those original 2, I'm already up to 4, so it's only really doubled so far, but it should have more of a chance in this last one. Let's see what actually happens. While that's actually processing, what is it? Let me just make sure how many. Yeah, we started with 4 of this solution. We're going to get flakes in these bottom 2. Let's see how many we get with the first bit of this. It's nearly done. Should be any second. There we go, 2. So I have kind of with that one, I've got, I guess, well, we'll see how many we finally get. We start with 5 iron ore to begin with, and we'll wait for that to finish. Now, remember that I got the power for this from a gasoline engine. And a gasoline engine, just to give you an idea, if we hook this up directly rather than through the coil, gasoline engine, torque is 128, speed is 512. See anything? So we've set it to the exact figures for the output. So really we don't need the industrial coil here unless you want to supply more to the actual extractor, and that's one of the advantages of it. But we can take this away now, but we have storable energy, which is just as good as any other mod that has storable energy. So yeah, we don't need to run it directly, but just bear in mind this is more of a charger now, and you flip it to off, charge it back up, and away you go. You can store it for a rainy day. And it stores even if you move that block, so don't worry about breaking things. So that's one way of doing things. We could use the gasoline engine. However, what we can also do is we can use cheaper engines even and run the extractor constantly, or at least run it in one of the 2 modes constantly, because we're going to have to flip between them. And to do that, we have to look at combining the power from multiple engines. And that's where we come on to the various things I've been building. The shaft junctions and the bevel gears. Now, for argument's sake, let's assume we take steam engines. That's the next step down from gasoline engines. And if we look, the gasoline engine, 128 newton meters of torque, 512 speed. What's the steam engine like? Okay, 512 rads of speed, same, but only a quarter of the torque. That's important. And a quarter of the power, of course. The important part there is that, well, if it's a free engine and we can make power for free just with one lava block, then why don't we use 4 of those? So it isn't really cheesing them amazingly. You know, there's other ways of doing it with, you know, many of these engines, but 4 is reasonable, isn't it? So if we want to do that, remember that if we had 4 steam engines here, let's just put some blocks down. All of them are going to output a shaft towards me, and we can combine those. So let's for a second put one here and one here. These are the bevel gears, 90 degrees. We want to, if this is an engine, we want to take something from the east now and output to the south. So east to south. And on this side, we want to take it from the east again and output to the north, which it already is. So as you can see, 90 degrees. And it's very common sense that you can see the gears. Now, that's all same as this. It's all quite straightforward. This is where we get to the shaft junctions and people's heads start to explode a bit. Shaft junctions, let's just put that down for a second. Okay, so let's hit this with a screwdriver for a second. You see there's 2 green and 1 red. What that means is that this is in combining mode or merging mode. It's going to take input from 2 sides and output to the red side. We can shift right click. Now what this is going to do instead is going to take input from 1 engine and output to 2 sides. So this is a way of splitting the power. And if it's in this mode, we can right click and choose the ratio of split between the straight section, which is, if this is the input, the amount of power that goes this way is the straight, and the bend is the amount of power that goes that way. So you can use this if you wanted to. With the way it's set up right now, you can take an engine's input from here, split it, send some into here, which will send it back that way. So you can almost reverse the way the engine works. But we don't want split mode, we want merge mode. So let's see what we can actually do here. Yeah, we only have a few options, so you've got to make sure that the green one's on the right squares. We don't want to output it here, so let's right-click again. We want to output it straight away this way. Can we do that with the other one, I wonder? As long as we can do it both ways. So if I move this around again, can I? There we go. Yep, so red, these two are both going to be coming straight out now. Good? Thought so. But we can do it again. We can put a bevel gear here and say I want to input from the east and I want to output to the north. Input east, output north. And then what we're going to need is another shaft junction. Now I haven't got one on me, so I'm going to build one in a second. And this is going to combine this one and output this direction. So let me just, let me go and create one. So at least you've seen one of these actually being built, shaft junction. It's just the basic stuff to make it, so I shouldn't need anything excessive. Let's just make, you know, our usual pieces of equipment, HSLA steel, some flat panels, some vertical shaft units, and then it's something like, something like this, with two there. And of course, that's where the game actually crashed. Or rather, OBS crashed. So, yeah, we've got two of these, and we can get this back. While we're at it, what does it take to make steam engines again? Steam engines are pretty safe and straightforward. I'm going to need some gold, which is fine. Impeller and base panels are condenser, so that's liquid pipe. But they get two of those, so we need 8 liquid pipe. How much do I have? 6. Of course, I have 6. Why would I ever have enough liquid pipe? And yeah, simpler recipe. So I just need glass, which means I need sand, and I have no sand. I'm going to craft the steam engines off camera, but while I'm just finishing the setup here, let's put this shaft junction in place. Once again, turn it. So I'm accepting power from 2 sides that I want, and then outputting here. So at this point, once I've got 4 steam engines at the back, I should have the equivalent of a gasoline engine output right here. At which point I could put an industrial coil in place. Oops, I should really flip that back. Yeah, there we go. How much is left? 27. Okay. Yeah, so I should have enough of a gasoline output here, but I don't really need the industrial coil for a steam setup because I don't have any ethanol to burn. It's going to be going constantly. So I could just probably move this 16 gearbox, the steel one, move the bevel gears and move the extractor, and then run the liquid pipe from the same input that I'm putting into the back of the steam engines. So why don't I do that off camera, and we'll come back and see if it works. And here we are with the setup. And I've got something wrong. Oh no, I haven't. Okay, that was just because everything was starting up. Okay, that sound you heard was just the sound of the bevel gears, the shaft junctions, having different speeds from different engines. That's because they were starting up. But they're now started up, and if you're wondering what's going on with the whole flames, instead of having lava underneath them, I've taken the opposite approach for this one. Sorry, not opposite, a similar approach, but using netherrack. So one block space underneath this with netherrack beneath that. Right click on it with this flint and steel and you get fire. The advantage of this is that I don't need the cooling fins on top. This is again another good tip by Toxurial. Oh my god, Toxurial. And this stops me needing cooling fins, which is fine. I kind of prefer the lava effect rather than this flame effect going through it, but that's like, okay, that does it fine. I've got the water supply obviously as normal, and you'll see it goes up to 117 and stops. Do bear in mind with steam engines that this is biome dependent, so I think if you're in a desert, you may get explosions with the lava, even with the cooling fins. Here, no problem either way. So just bear in mind what biome you're in. And of course now all these shaft junctions are now working once they start up. The gearbox is working. which is turning the bevel gears, which is making the extractor work. And you can see, same kind of thing with speed and torque. It's in torque mode, which makes this last one work. Now, when I moved this, I had to take 7 flakes out. So it's 7 plus whatever this actually finally produces. And all of this no longer needs ethanol. So I can get rid of this entire ethanol. Yeah, we're going to come back and actually probably use ethanol and other such fuels in future, but you know, I can get a quintupling machine quite easily. You know, I'm really happy about that. And I don't think that I can switch this. Can I switch this with a redstone redstone effect, I wonder? I don't think I can, but that might be interesting if I could. Nope, no effect. So, yeah, we've got pretty much everything we want to do. Basically free quintupling in this episode, which I think is a pretty good end to this episode. It's one of those straightforward things. Yeah, I mean, this is 25 minutes. I don't want to start something majorly new for this. A couple of other quick things. There is a better version of it. Well, I say better, a different version using the same fuel called a performance engine. It's less efficient when you just supply it with ethanol, but you can add additives, and it depends if you've got resources, and I don't. I will demonstrate it anyway in one of the episodes. I suppose I have redstone, that's one of them. You can basically boost the output of that type of fuel, and I don't need it yet. So when we come to that, along with a lot of the other engines, which will give us a lot higher power, torque, and speed, I'm trying to demonstrate them, you know, as you actually would do if you're progressing through the game. And having this fairly early on with just iron, a bit of gold, and a lot of steel, you know, this is the not downside. This is the trade-off you make if you want like this free quintupling. You have a bit more complexity setting the machine up. You've got to have these shaft junctions. Hopefully this has all been clear in this episode, though. I've tried to spend this episode explaining these so that we won't have to later. You know, if I put down something like a gearbox, you'll know why I'm doing it, or a shaft junction, or a bevel gear. I just want them to be easy to understand. One final note: you can break the bevel gears. So don't try and scale this up and add maybe more than 4 engines at once. It's going to cause problems. Later on, there's an upgrade to a bevel gear uses bedrock in some way. I think it's a bedrock gear or something like that, and it actually stops that from happening. So you can then start to chain together machines if you wanted to. So just bear in mind that one isn't going to react too kindly to trying to put too many engines on it. But as you saw, 4's fine. And in particular, the shaft junction 2, that's going to complain a bit when engines start up. So again, just bear that one in mind. That's not damaging it, that's just merging things and getting both inputs up to speed in the case of inputs. That shouldn't happen in the case of the splitting mode. And don't forget that this needs lubricant, whatever you do, because otherwise you're making a lot more steel into a new gearbox, or at least a new gear to repair it. So I am still using ethanol for this, I know. But just as like the grinder has even less requirements. What's the grinder? Grinder requirements. So that only needs minimum torque of 128, which is a steam engine. So you could easily power this with a steam engine, and that would work, and then optimize for that. So I probably will change it to a steam engine in between the episodes, and I'll go through and maybe change some of this stuff to optimize it a little bit more. Some other items. Is there anything else I wanted to mention in this episode? There's lots of other items to cover, but not quite yet, I don't think. Yeah, I'll cover kind of scaling up the furnace in another episode. Let's see, have we finished? Well, it's already up to 18 from 5 ore, so it's already it's already gone past triple, and yeah, we've still got 6 solution left. So even if they were 1-to-1 now, I would have quintupled the ore. So great for me. I love it. Hopefully you guys have too, and hopefully you find that you want to use RotaryCraft now, which is kind of the point, really. You know, it's not always in a huge number of packs. Everyone has thermal expansion and Ender IO these days, but RotaryCraft has a really, really good machine system. So that's something that we should continue to work on. So once again, thanks for listening to the episode. If you've liked this episode, feel free to give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you didn't like it for some reason. You don't like free quintupling of ores. I don't know why. If you haven't subscribed already, feel free to do so, and more importantly, leave me comments. If you've got any questions, you want me to answer things, I do read all the comments. I do try to respond to all the ones that are asking a question, at least, if not most of them, and we'll see where we get to from there. Once again, thanks for watching.